In 1985, the Goiânia Institute of Radiotherapy in Brazil moved locations. They left behind a cesium-137 cancer therapy machine. 2 years later, on September 13, 1987, 2 men break into the building and steal the machine, as the guard that was hired to protect the building never showed up for work. The men wheeled it home and sold it to a junk dealer, who wanted the stainless steel. Then the junk dealer noticed a blue glow from a capsule. Someone dug out the powdery material. It was roughly 3 ounces of cesium-137, with a screwdriver. Others daubed it on their skin as though it were carnival glitter. Inside the capsule was a bright blue powder that they scooped up. They shared it with friends and relatives, even painting blue crosses on their shirts, and some even used it as makeup, completely unaware of what they had. The handling of the blue powder was enough for the 2 thieves to require fingers and an arm to be amputated. But before it had gotten to that point, the men decided to sell it to a local scrapyard. The machine was further dismantled by the owner, Dever Ferreira. When he was finally able to release the blue powder himself, he was fascinated by it. Believing it to be highly valuable, even possibly supernatural, he invited family members over to see it, even passing it around. From there it was then sold to another scrapyard. Dever's brother, Odesson, even took a chunk of the material home with him. He was a local bus driver and unknowingly contaminated dozens of passengers. He's also one of the most contaminated surviving victims of the disaster, and he says he can still feel the burning in his hands. His 6-year-old daughter even played with the blue powder on the floor before having dinner, where some of the radioactive material had fallen on her sandwich and she consumed it. Tragically, within just 1 month she passed away and was buried in a lead coffin, encased in concrete. Nobody knew that the material was highly radioactive. As time passed, everyone who had came in contact with the machine or the powder began falling seriously ill. It wasn't until a concerned relative had a feeling the machine had something to do with it and took some of the blue powder to the hospital to be tested. Doctors were quick to determine that they were suffering from acute radiation poisoning. When an international team arrived at the hospital to help with treatment, they found little girl in an isolated room because the hospital staff were too scared to go near her. She had absorbed 6 grays, an effective dose of 600 rem. By the time Goiâ's authorities brought the situation under control several weeks later, 249 people were found to be contaminated, and the 10 most serious patients were transported to Rio de Janeiro for treatment. The 6-year-old girl was severely ill for a month, dead patches of skin on her hands, hair falling out, capillaries rupturing, infections raging in her lungs and kidneys before she died. They resulted in over 100,000 people being isolated in the Olympic Stadium for screening. 250 people were found to be contaminated. 28 skin-related injuries from radiation, and 2 men, 1 woman and 1 child died. Over 40 homes and buildings had to be demolished. The remaining chunk of cesium, as well as over 6,000 tons of contaminated clothing, furniture, pieces of buildings and even dirt, were packed into steel drums and containers and dumped in an abandoned quarry. Tell me, what do you think about this crime?